Same here. Great to see you.
Hello and good afternoon. Hello and welcome to ETBFSI.com. You're watching the special series of ETBFSI.com, which is FinTech Diary. In the special episode today of FinTech Diary, we are going to discuss how the financial institutions, the central bank, and overall Indian economy is leading ahead with the CBDC transformation. In the November 2022, RBI launched a pilot project of CBDC, which was one of the ambitious product, and we are trying to discuss here in terms of how it is shaping up. The FinTech Diary, which is a dedicated series for fintech and financial innovation, where we interview the founders, the CEOs, the regulators, and the change makers at the FinTech Diary. We also do special series on the most trending topic. Recently, in the RBI policy, RBI came up with the programmable and many other functions like offline functionality of CBDC, and we thought it is important to discuss this particular topic in detail. So, friends, I have very important speakers with me. Let me introduce you to them first before we just begin the show. So, my first speaker for this particular panel discussion is Mr. Samir Shetty, the President and Head Digital Business and Transformation of Axis Bank. Samir, glad to have you.
Thank you, Amol. Thanks for having me on this show and look forward.
Thank you. My next speaker is Mr. Sushant Dash, Deputy CTO, State Bank of India. Sushant, glad to have you. Thank you. My next speaker is Ms. Tanvi Ratna, Founder and CEO, Policy 4.0. Tanvi, glad to have you.
Thanks, Amol. Pleasure to be here.
And I have Ajay Rajan also with me, who's the country head and government multinational and international businesses, transaction banking and knowledge units of Yes Bank. Ajay, glad to have you too.
Thank you, Amol. Thanks for having me here.
So great to have you, and let's begin. I think everyone wants to know, how CBDC will, make a change or transformation in their life. So I will begin by asking Ajay and Samir the first very question, and I think Samir can go ahead with it. Is first explain us what is CBDC? I mean, a lot of people still know it, but still there are a lot of confusions. Many people still try to compare CBDC with UPI. But quickly, if Samir, just go ahead to begin with and tell us what is CBDC.
Sure, thanks. So CBDC obviously stands for Central Bank Digital Currency. The intent with which RBI has introduced this is to say that CBDC is the digital equivalent of cash. So just like you have, let's say you go to an ATM and withdraw some currency and keep it in your pocket, that currency is in your wallet. It is not in any banking system. It is not in any bank account. It is in your wallet. And similarly, CBDC is in your wallet. It's not in any banking account. It's just that that wallet happens to be digital and sits in your mobile phone versus, kind of being physical and fitting into your trouser somewhere. So the treatment of CBDC is exactly like cash, which means that all the benefits of that cash would have over money in the bank account would accrue to CBDC, including things like anonymity and so on and so forth. The most important point to note is that CBDC is not like in UPI, money is being transferred from your bank account to somebody else's bank account. The money was in the bank account. In the case of CBDC, the money has moved from the bank account to your wallet, and then it's kind of getting transferred from your wallet to wherever else. So that's, I would say, like a quick, 101.
Sure. Thanks, Samir. Ajay, what is the difference that CBDC is making specifically into the finance world?
So CBDC, as Samir also alluded, is rupee in the digital form. So fundamentally, it is different than digital money. I think that is what we need to first internalize. So UPI or NEFT, RTGS, any of the payment modes that we are used to, having and transacting are all money moving out of our bank account, right? Whereas CBDC is actually a currency minted by Reserve Bank of India in digital form. I've said this in many forums, Amol, and maybe at the cost of repetition, I would just like to maybe repeat this. But the gravity of the launch of CBDC, I think, is far underestimated, because we are actually, as a generation, fortunate enough to have seen UPI, Aadhaar, a lot of those other public digital infra which have been launched and are today roaring success, hallmark of India. But CBDC, while it is in the nascent stage at this point of time, will actually be a similar other mode, of transacting or a payment or store value, which I think in future generations, when our children, grandchildren, we will see using CBDC. I think we will proudly say that we were the generation which launched CBDC, and we're part of the whole ecosystem which innovated on use case around this, right? So it is. I think it is that critical, and there is, while at this point of time it is at a pilot stage. It is not formally launched in the country, but even at the pilot stage, there are various use cases which CBDC is being experimented on, and predominantly it gives two features. One, of course, it is part of the payment system, and hence can be used as payment for both P2P and P2M, which is in a lot similar or akin to how you do UPI. However, the major critical feature of CBDC is also that it also is stored value. It is a sovereign currency. It is cash like Samir also mentioned, and hence has a very critical feature of store value, which are use cases, and we will speak about it, some of it, as we go, which can is reflective of CBDC. There are few other innovations which are underway, which again, in my view, will form the hallmark of how one views CBDC. One is something which is very recently allowed by Reserve Bank, and various banks are in various stages of implementing, which is programmability. And I will maybe speak about it in more detail as we go. The second feature is offline, which is enabling payments in areas in the country where there is low connectivity or no connectivity, because that is again a very large area in the country where digital payments have not yet been proliferated. And the third would be again some time away, but cross-border remittances, which again I believe CBDC can create a significant material impact in the way money moves, between jurisdictions. So in all, though nascent, but in my view, CBDC has already made its presence felt in terms of its usage and adaptability. And as we go, we will see CBDC becoming mainstream in terms of how cash gets converted from physical to digital, and use cases are developed on top of that.
Sure. Noted your points, Ajay and Samir, and thanks for giving a basic brief about CBDC as well. Again, just to reiterate, for the audience, what I learned from Samir and Ajay and in general is CBDC is absolutely different from UPI. It's just a wallet, just like a cash in your wallet, and you can transfer it to anybody who has a digital wallet, just like transferring money. Now, coming back to specifically on the policy front, before I go to Mr. Dash or Samantha from Sushant from SBI, let me bring Tanvi here. And Tanvi, generally, such decisions are taken not in a hurry, but CBDC was always there in the pipeline. So, on a policy front, how big this decision is, and what kind of changes do you see specifically in the financial and the economical side of the future of money?
Yeah, thanks Amol for this question. I hope you can hear me fine.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think in terms of CBDC, as you said, it's not just come out of anywhere. I think it's been in the roadmap of the government for quite some time, since the first crypto committee was formed in the country. And I think there are a lot of macro level shifts that are happening, whether we see at the level of the monetary system, we see geopolitically, or we see even within our country, there's a whole demographic change, there's a whole shift in the way that we are adopting and using services in general, right? So you have a very digitally native generation, and you have just, you know, a whole ecosystem of digital services for everything, for all your daily needs, right? So in this kind of environment where also you have, you can say, like private sector innovations which are coming in DeFi and cryptocurrency, things like this, there is just a lot of systemic shifts that government has to deal with and has to respond to. And I think the CBDC, because right now we are looking at it more from a lens of payments, and we're questioning what it has to do vis-a-vis UPI and things like that. It's not just a payment system shift, right? As I think our panelists before me also mentioned very beautifully, this is sort of a paradigm shift, because you are not launching natively digital money from the state, which is in a completely different native form factor from anything that existed before. And so the subsequent changes in the downstream infrastructure can also be very transformative, right? And because it is too disruptive, you launch it in phases, and you run pilots, and it is launched in a cautious and systematic way. But the potential is colossal, right? If I say it in a millennial lingo, right?
Sure, Tanvi. Noted your points. Now, let me bring Sushant here. Sushant, you heard the policy view and the bankers view as well. You being the largest bank, generally the transactions and the volume of any instrument is very high at SBI. So, how has been the response specifically at SBI on the CBDC side, and what kind of difference have you seen in the payment space with CBDC? Sushant, can you hear me?
Yeah, thanks, Amol. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
So, I mean, the contribution from SBI to this pilot program. So we are the first cohort bank when we started this journey, more than a year back. But before I put some sort of of course it is a legal tender, but other than that the three key principles I would like to highlight before I jump into that what we feel, and what are the flexibility, and what are the things that we do apart from that uh, currently we have, and what are the kind of research and development we try to do as part of this CBDC ecosystem. So the key principle that we followed is that it's not the CBDC kind of this is a hybrid model. So banks are kind of intermediary to distribute this digital currency into their respective wallet. So there should not be any disruption. So as far as the policy, or the kind of internal process as far as other payment ecosystems are concerned, and also it should coexist. I mean, we are not trying to compete, or completely removing this UPI or NEFT, or or RTGS, other kind of mode of payments. And also it brings some sort of third is that it brings some sort of innovation and competition. So I would say that this is not a product, this is not a platform, this is an ecosystem. So completely digitizing that physical cash in the way that is being kind of
Right.
utilized in this payment ecosystem, whether it is feature phone or smartphone, from the financial inclusion point of view. So we sort of try to innovate different kind of the offline programmability, and also we have a scale. So major emphasis is in our kind of the infrastructure that we try to set up. So the infrastructure scalability is very, very important, because it brings kind of digital distributor ledger, that is the blockchain backed technology in the distribution side, and also retail side also very massively. This has to be scaled and resilient. So these are getting evolved during that period of our the pilot program. But on top of that, the use cases that we want, our main objective is to focus on this adoption. And this adoption kind of it brings that how you are having that resilient system, how this grievance redressal mechanism is in place. So SBI is trying to do that, so that we can provide a seamless experience as far as this digital currency and also CBDC wallet from SBI is concerned.
Okay,
Amol,
sure.
If I may just add, some just couple of points on, top of the question that you asked. So from a value perspective, while as I said, again, it is in a pilot stage, so it's not a full-fledged launch. So every customer, whether it's a consumer or a merchant, is being solicited for adoption and being pushed to use the CBDC in transaction, right? So whether it is P2P or P2M, but intuitively, and when we take feedback also from customers, from a consumer perspective, the benefit that one sees as compared to maybe using other modes which they do in their day-to-day cases is it is CBDC is more anonymous than the other digital payments that they use, right? So today, when I actually go to a juice shop or a bread shop and buy those 5 rupee, 10 rupee, 30 rupees, 50 rupees, spending, it kind of balloons my account statement today, right? So while yes, it is very frictionless in terms of usage, but when I tomorrow, from a account statement point of view, when I look at it, it's kind of a lot of stuff which is there, right? In CBDC, there is only one debit, which goes into the wallet, and thereafter all the transactions are pretty much in the wallet. It gives the same experience in terms of frictionless, but it also declutters my account statement to a large extent, right? So that is consumer point of view. In a classic P2P use case, that is one big benefit, that it is more anonymous, than my current payment modes. From a merchant perspective, there is, in my view, other than this same fact which I mentioned, that all the transactions go into the wallet, and from the wallet, as a merchant, I redeem into my current account, right? So again, there is the many becomes one, and there is a single debit which is redemption from CBDC wallet, which is what comes in the account statement. So anonymity to that extent is better than traditional digital modes. The other very valuable benefit from a merchant perspective is, this is the only payment mode mechanism in the country which offers instant settlement at zero cost from a merchant standpoint. There is no other payment mode which settles immediately for a merchant at zero cost. This is actually the only payment mode. Now, which is why I said that, as more and more thought leadership happens, or more market advocacy happens in terms of CBDC, the use cases, etc., you will find the merchant adoption will actually go to the next level, right? So there are two things. One, accessibility. Access has already been solved for when RBI made UPI and CBDC QR interoperable. I think the access point was taken care, right? So today you have 50 million merchants in the country who can technically accept CBDC without even doing an extra effort. But those who have wallet will get the credit immediately. Those who do not have the wallet will get money on T+1, T+2. So when people actually come to know about CBDC more and more, right, when there is people like you will promote it more in the media and so on and so forth, that is when merchants will, in my view, automatically shift towards CBDC. And then you will find merchant-induced adoption also coming. Today it's a bank-induced adoption. Tomorrow it will become a merchant-induced adoption. Merchant bolega, bhaiya aap CBDC se pay kar do. So that is the value, in my belief, that the value which I am seeing right now as we speak, merchants and consumers seeing even on very simple P2P, P2M use cases. The value which will emanate out of programmability and offline and all, I think will be phenomenal. then comes the real value of a new currency being involved.
Hmm. Sure, I think that was really meaningful, Ajay. And yes, we are trying our best to let people know what exactly the CBDC is, and trying to avoid, in fact, the confusion. Also, we are letting people know that as you said, that transaction is happening in a real time, and you can actually transferring money. For example, Ramesh is giving money to his friend, which is Somesh, 100 rupees from one pocket to 100 rupees to other pocket. It's as simple as this, and in fact there is a different token. So it's a very interesting mechanism which the Reserve Bank and the whole developed on the blockchain technology. I think when people download the bank's application and do it, then they will find a difference, that it's not an UPI, it's actually you're giving your money in a digital form. And in fact, we launched this in 2022, but if I look at the data which was of till December, there are more than 2 million users specifically for retail. There are more than 3 million users specifically for the merchant sites, 4 cities, 13 banks, 18 locations, and 9 wholesale banks are also adopting the CBDC. So on a P2P and a merchant sides, it's actually shaping up really well in terms of numbers. Obviously, as not has UPI. But let me bring here again Tanvi. And Tanvi, I want you to give some perspective specifically on the government business, because that is also one agenda that the government, or specifically the Reserve Bank, has. So can you tell me, how can actually CBDC change the way government does its business? Can CBDC, make a difference there in terms of making payment the way the government is doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely, Amol. So, I can also contrast it with what we have existing as infrastructure. So before I got into looking at digital assets and working with our government on that, I was a blockchain lead at Ernst Young, and I worked on the India stack at Ernst Young, right? So I have seen the evolution of say something as simple as the AEPS system, right? Which is your Aadhaar enabled payment system, and it was brought in to create this revolution on direct benefit transfer to scheme beneficiaries, at the last mile, right? And I think every Indian knows that in that fund transfer from the central government to state and to final beneficiaries, just how many issues used to exist, and how much of a role the India stack played in streamlining a lot of things over there. So if you take a simple thing like even fiscal transfers, for example, which is a pretty large issue in as we say, the business of government, right? Because there is a very large it's a huge quantum of money that flows from central government to state governments and then to end beneficiaries. And I'm talking about one specific kind of fiscal transfer, which is for centrally sponsored schemes, right? So there, we had this whole big system of PFMS, which I think Mr. Rajan might know of if he looks at government banking, and I'm sure our colleagues will also know. But there were lots of gaps in that system where we tried to do digitization in a way that let states report their fund utilization. Let's create a common window where central government and state government can see where is the where's the status of the fund disbursement, what's the utilization. And there were lots of gaps in that system. You would not have updates from the state side, you would not have visibility on what's happening. And I would say the center state relations, or what we call in policy the area of fiscal federalism, is a pretty challenging landscape for the government to navigate. So there, we had to create new innovations. Like now you have these single node accounts where lots of central government funds go, and state governments have a time limit now, in which they have to utilize that money. So that's working in a very still there's that system of like fund utilization. Someone at the ground executes a scheme. After a month they make a certificate and they report that to the government, and then that's the proxy for the benefit actually reaching the citizen, right? So I think on all these kind of applications, there's just so much scope for emerging technology. Like if you create CBDC, programmability, AI enablement, there could be a whole transformation in the relationship that the state has with the citizens, right? And in terms of how money flows to the end beneficiaries, right? So it's a very big area, and there are a lot of efficiencies which could come about, and that would just transform the pace of development in our country.
So I think if CBDC could improve the relations between state and central, nothing like that, which has been the issue for ages, right?
Correct. Amal, इसमें again, sorry, maybe I'll just add a couple of points to what Tanvi mentioned. So I think she alluded to a lot of these schemes which the government uses to disburse money and all. One of the biggest use case, again purely from a CBDC perspective, is DBTs, for example, right? Or use case based transfers. Now, इसमें there is obviously a lot of value which the two of the features of CBDC will bring to the table. One is programmability, the other is offline. So let me maybe elaborate a little bit. And before that, I think what is important to also note is when you look at cash in circulation, right? There's almost 35 lakh crores cash in circulation. There are two ways cash is used. One is which is used for hoarding. The other is which is used for transacting. अभी होर्डिंग को तो CBDC कुछ नहीं कर सकता है, वो तो जो है वो है, that will run its natural course. The transacting part is really where CBDC actually becomes very useful, because one needs to get into the depth of where are instances where cash is still prevalent, understand why is it prevalent, and then try to see, can I solve some of those using something like a CBDC, right, which is cash equivalent. So trust factor, for example, sometimes people are not comfortable with the digital, so they want to use cash. Sometimes, as I said earlier, internet connectivity could be an issue. So low connectivity, no connectivity, आपने UPI तो अच्छा है भैया, but UPI use नहीं होता है, वो घूमता रहता है, तो मैं कैसे करूँ, तो मेरे को cash pay करना है. So some of these are reasons why people are still on to cash, right? Now, when you look at, and these typically will happen in maybe tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 locations. Of course, it will also happen in tier 1, tier 2 because of trust and all that. But broadly, these are few of the reasons why this happens, right? Now, when I transpose this back to government-led payments, which was your question, right? So government biggest payments are DBTs, right? So they transfer direct benefit transfers into the account of beneficiaries. Now, that has removed all the leakages, increased transparency, all that is a tick in the box. But has someone realized कि ये जो पैसा उसके अकाउंट में आया, वो पैसा निकलेगा कैसे? The bank is 20 kilometers away, ATM is maybe 40 kilometers away. How does that person go and take the cash? He will go to the kirana shop, maybe use AEPS to withdraw whatever. There is a cost to all of that. So there is the usage of cash is still an issue, right? Now, two things can happen. One, programmability will make sure that the transparency is taken to the next level. So you have already solved money going into the account, but what you have not solved is it used for the purpose for which it was meant? So programmability will solve for that, right? So if the DBT is for say COVID relief, or seed procurement, for example, for farmers, right? So today I can, with programmability, I can seal the use case saying this can only be withdrawn from a government seed shop only for purchase of seed from that shop, right? So this can be programmed. So the money cannot be then used for purposes other than that. The second is, if when offline comes into play, and right now the regulator is working on proximity and non-proximity offline use cases, right? So once that comes into play and is live for usage, today when the money then comes to the beneficiary who's in the wallet, that person can technically go to the kirana shop next door, right? Even if the net connectivity is not there, he can actually use the CBDC in the next door shop rather than going to the bank, withdrawing money and then buying from that shop, right? So programmability gets done, government transfers gets done, and the offline also gets done, right? That is when you see the 360-degree view of the usage of CBDC, and that's where the full impact of something like a CBDC will come into play.
Right.
Sure. So,
So
so Samir,
yeah, I would
so
like to
Samir,
add few points, Amol, and Ajay pointed out correctly. But from the SBI side, I would like to give a little bit thought on that. First thing is that CBDC is purely, you don't need to necessarily have a bank account linked to this. I mean, you can receive money. That is the beauty of CBDC. Today maybe a different kind of we do the KYC and all. That is the reason in the pilot program.
hmm,
But to use CBDC, you don't need to necessarily have your kind of bank account attached to that. That
great.
is point number one. Point number two, which is unlikely case of UPI, you must be linking that before that. And second thing is that we all talk about only the transaction, this use cases in offline and all. But here other two things what SBI is focusing on, that innovation point of view, how we can plug this CBDC in our regular the products and services, like the KCC or some sort of the MSME lending and all, where we can also have them to be part of this ecosystem, and we can plug that. And the second thing is that in offline also, we always talk about the wallet, which is not necessarily having our smartphone attached to that. How we can leverage that in a feature phone. They don't have a smartphone, they don't have a wallet. How we can leverage that for those segment of these people who are using only the feature phone. I mean, how to enable this offline CBDC, maybe this CBDC card, or in the feature phone we can enable some sort of UCCI based kind of mode of interaction to use that. So
Okay.
these are a few things that we are planning from our bank point of view. And fourth thing I would like to highlight over here is that definitely the grievance mechanism is very very kind
Correct.
of very very important for this. So SBI is clearly focusing on this grievance redressal mechanism and fraud management. We see that some of how to manage that fraud. That also we are looking from that the technology point of view. But if you look into that, the SBI's point of view is that we it is not mandated by RBI. It is open to that. But we have a cap of transaction amount 10,000. You cannot have a transaction more than 10,000, and also per day limit is also there, and also this the transaction count. So these are limiting. We are exploring that at the cost of kind of managing this customer expectation and surging over here the usage and all.
Noted.
At the
Noted.
same time also we take care our infrastructure also, even though
Sure.
because large scale it is open to our whole lot of customer around all these customer of around 45 crore plus. So we are not ready with our own infrastructure that how to scale it. So we
That's
cannot open up all those things. So these limits and opening up for all our customers with few innovations in that you know would make a difference. But
sure.
I feel the banks should explore more from this usage, and plugging these CBDC into this the existing product and service to some extent, so that it would good give kind of benefit to RBI to understand that it is really working from the usage point of view.
Sure, Sumanta, for adding that, Sushant. Samir, you heard, Ajay also talking about programmability and Sushant adding couple of points. I want your specific view, Samir, on the programmability part, because, the first part was obviously just wallet to wallet transfer, but the second part is it's not going to be just wallet to wallet transfer, but it's going to be a specific transfer. For example, if A is transferring to B, the B will have different segments. If B wants to spend it to education or health or a restaurant, I think that can be a major part of the programmability. So how will it work? How do you see the pros and cons of programmability, Samir?
Yeah, so thanks Amol for bringing that. So it's in my mind actually. So look, I mean, all like CBDC is great technology, and India is perhaps a leader in launching it, and so on and so forth. But if you look at what we have right now, and you say how is from a consumer perspective that fundamentally better compared to what already exists, there are maybe one or two things, but then after that you kind of start scratching your head, right? So as an example, this anonymity is a great point. The point Ajay made around one debit to your savings account, it's a fantastic point. It really helps during tax filing, and so on and so forth. But outside of these 2 3 points, there is not much to kind of differentiate. But programmability is a feature of CBDC that doesn't exist anywhere else, which can be a real, in my mind, like a real, uh, you know, uh, feature that can turbocharge usage and adoption. Simply put, what programmability is, Ajay already explained. Programmability is that I transfer some money to you, but with the condition that you can use it only for X or Y or Z, right? And outside of X or Y or Z, you will not be able to use it. So, as an example, there are many examples of this. One example, which already spoken about, government wants to give some subsidy for buying seeds. So they will say that you can only buy seeds. Now you can't go and spend it at a restaurant. You can only go to a dealer who sells seeds and buy. Kind of the money will be, it will not work anywhere else. It will work only there. Is kind of one. Second one is bank is giving you a loan for a specific purpose. Let's say KCC, and now KCC should ideally be used for buying seeds or fertilizers or whatever else which goes into the farm. Now KCC can't be used for buying a mobile phone, right? So now you can kind of program that into the currency. And there are many others of this nature, right? Let's say even use cases like meal cards. There are tax implications of spends made on meals. So you can give a meal card to your employees, and you can say that it can only be used in places where you can have a meal, and only that amount then is tax exempt. So that will be used. That will work only in those specific places. So programmability makes this the power of CBDC go up quite dramatically, because there are new niche payment use cases that come to the fore. Uh, the con of programmability obviously is that kind of the recipient will not like to be constrained, right? Like obviously, if I am a recipient, I would not like to be constrained to one use case. So there is that con, and I'm sure we will see some push on adoption. But that con is required, right? Like that is it is required that you use it in the right way so that the money is spent efficiently. And so I would say that con is not really a con. So yeah, so programmability in my mind is a big unlock for CBDC, and it is. I think there'll be just so many use cases that will come out of this, which we can't even envisage right now. Once programmability comes out.
कौन से बचाने के लिए ये फीचर है?
No, but again, there was a small question, and maybe Samir, Ajay, or whoever wants to add that. So, because of the programmability, and RBI will know that this money is specifically given to you for education, and you cannot use it for a restaurant purpose, right? Or if I give you for a study, you don't go and eat a food out of that money, which simply means that your privacy is not going to be there, and RBI is going to monitor where the money is going to be saved.
No,
Is it like
That's a misnomer. See, the programmability is coded into the currency.
Correct.
Is the currency? It's like, think of it this way, that there are two forms of Indian rupee, right? Conceptually, physical. One form you can go anywhere and give it. Another form which you can only give in three places. Right? Both forms are available out of ATMs, so you can go to the ATM and pull out both forms of money. Now, the first form you can use wherever you want. The second form you can only use in those three places, right? Now, RBI or bank or nobody will know where you used that second form in which of those three places, right? So this is not like somebody is monitoring at the back end and stopping. It is coded into the currency. The currency will not be. It will be used. There are some. I mean, I'll not go into the technicalities of this, but there are merchant points where it will be accepted. There are other merchant points where it will not be accepted.
Sure.
Without any invasion of privacy. The privacy is not a question at all here.
Okay, okay,
Correct. That's
sure.
very well put. So it is supposed to make sure that it is used for the intended use. It is
Right.
absolutely not invading your privacy. It is making sure कि वो एक intent के लिए भेजा था तो वो intent के लिए ही use होता. I think that's the bigger point.
Sure. So, Tanvi, let me come back to you on a policy front. A lot of changes are happening with CBDC. It's not going to be just a payment product right now after listening to programmability. What are the specifically on the government sides and emerging tech sides? What are maybe the newer case studies that you would like to see or you would like to recommend specifically on a CBDC where you think it can create a great change?
Yeah, I think the universe for that's quite big, and I think it'll range from like case studies which are like maybe really sort of extrapolating into the future, and from things that are already happening right now. So I think there are a lot of changes which are already happening right now. So if you see, SEBI is looking to move to a T+0 market based system, right? And I think a very useful enabler in that could be the CBDC. Now, I'm not saying that SEBI is looking at the CBDC. I'm just saying that that could be a very obvious place to start experimenting. I think there's a lot of a movement on this real world asset tokenization space, right?
Huh.
Which there's talks of government securities and things like that, but then also other asset classes can see this. And I think these are things which are kind of already in the works, right? But there's a lot of things coming. Like if you see all the AI, Gen AI pieces which are slowly coming into the financial sector. And I think that is an area where the work is just starting, I would say, on the government side as well. There will be very transformational things. So if you take programmability and blend that with AI, um, that is a very powerful toolkit, right, with which to transform pretty much every level in the financial stack. And I think if you ask me, I think there's a lot of very experimental things also that they should look at. I would say, like, even if you look at composability, which is a very decentralized financial principle, where you're looking at this money Legos concept and you're looking at how services can be offered. I think banks can do so much with that, in terms of how they can bundle services, how they can bundle financial offerings. So I think the landscape is quite big. I think there's some very obvious places where you're already seeing that begin. And yeah, I think then a lot will depend on the Viksit Bharat plan, and just what the focus areas
Great.
are.
Noted your points. In fact, on a Vikasit Bharat front and kind of innovation that is happening, I don't need to tell, we all know that. But the global or specifically the foreign countries are praising a lot. And specifically after the CBDC pilot, there are a lot of episodes written on specifically the case studies that India has showcased on CBDC. So I also have started receiving questions from the audience, and I would also urge audience to, have some specific questions. I have received a lot of questions on connection between CBDC and UPI, which I think we partly discussed. But let me shoot this question: how much cost burden will CBDC carry to scale up, maybe like UPI for banks and otherwise? Anybody wants to take that question? Ajay, you're smiling. I think you have the answer already.
No, I don't want to answer that. That is why I said. So no, okay, but jokes aside, Amol, I think it's too early to to give that answer. The reason I say that is again, CBDC right now is at a very infant stage, right?
Hmm.
So it is, as I said earlier, it is not even launched. It is at a pilot stage where also we are trying to see how scalable it can become, what kind of tech infrastructure is required, what is the final features which are required to be put on that, what will be the impact of that in terms of having a technical architecture in place and so on and so forth, right? So offline, for example, is going to be a very critical feature of CBDC. Right now we are, I don't think there is a it is not even finalized in terms of whether it will be with proximity, without proximity, and so on and so forth. I think it's a question which is very early at this point of time to compare it with the scale required for UPI. I think is too early on right now. So time will tell. Once things get a little more evolved, and then we will, of course, see what it takes to make CBDC at population scale. See, end of the day, I think one thing is very certain, that in India, any public digital infrastructure which is getting created is only getting created for population scale, right? So CBDC, if it will, when it will get launched, will be launched for population scale only. So, how much will it cost, etc.? I think it's a question that can be answered later.
Sure, Ajay. Samir, you also want to add something on the cost side?
No, I think Ajay covered it beautifully. But since you brought up the topic of UPI, I will go into a completely different tangent, which is one thing that most people don't know, is that today you can take your CBDC wallet and you can scan any UPI QR across any merchant across India and make a payment directly from your wallet. It will go through. All right. So CBDC is completely interoperable with UPI. And people who tried this like once or twice have basically started using CBDC very extensively. And I wanted to kind of just say this so that at least all the audience here, is fully up to date and they can try it and they can use it as well.
Yeah,
Sure.
actually, I think we would, on behalf, Samir and I, on behalf of, I think, the entire banking fraternity, would like to, Amol, through this forum, like to tell people that they should use the CBDC app. It is made in India app, made for India app. And I'm sorry, even the State Bank is there. On the behalf of all three of us, actually, it's a request. So please do use more and more CBDC. In fact, it's very, very seamless. Most of the banks now have auto upload, so you don't even need to have a two-step process of putting money into your wallet and then using it. In fact, you can straight away even also use the CBDC QR and make the payment. It will get directly debited to your bank account, though in which case the lines that I mentioned in terms number of line items in your account statement will continue to appear. So the more efficient way of using it is moving some money into the wallet and then using the wallet to make payment. But please use CBDC app as your default payment system when you make QR based payments.
Sure, Ajay and Samir. Sushant, I will, you partly mentioned this about infrastructure and scaling up infrastructure. And this particular question is about infrastructure only. So for UPI, we understand, the kind of gigantic traffic is there and the infrastructure is quite robust over there. Again, the CBDC numbers are still very less. This is the background. The question that I have received from the audience is, does India or specifically the bank have the large infrastructure to handle, the bandwidth of CBDC if it goes to a next level? And what are the banks doing to scale them up?
Yeah, thanks, Amol. As far as SBI is concerned, we saw this kind of the target that we achieved 10 lakhs per day and all. So we saw a little bit kind of surge and spike in our these CBDC platform, but definitely because this ecosystem you can compare with UPI from in terms of your the number of transactions where we are having today is kind of maturity. But if we look into that the CBDC ecosystem, so it has different kind of technology, and also it needs different kind of your the infrastructure need. So in this case, we are very prepared because that SBI is the having its own largest private cloud infrastructure. So any point of time we can scale it out and scale it up. So question is that scaling is okay, but thing is that how kind of you are handling those the massive transaction, because in CBDC if you look into that as compared to UPI. CBDC one transaction of your one token is having multiple sub transactions, so it is it needs highly scalable infrastructure. Maybe hopping may be very less because it is kind of not fully automated, because you need to get the currency, digital currency from the RBI vault and park it in our system and distribute it. It is not fully automatic. When we are going to see that kind of the automatic kind of on demand the digital currency flow, and also having adapting more automation capability into this, because here we are primarily focusing on the reconciliation. If you look into today's CBDC, it is not purely CBDC, because programmability and offline are the real kind of feature of our digital currency. It is still depending on the UPI interoperability, UPI infrastructure. See, load is coming on the UPI infrastructure, so it is not coming on CBDC as a kind of the as far as UPI interoperability is concerned. But from bank side, SBI side, we are fully prepared, and we have a massively plan for this. And also inside CBDC, within our innovation team, we are trying to explore, and also we have a separate kind of infrastructure to test the performance, whatever that is there for the production system. So we try to do that. But cost point of view, I cannot comment on that, because there are so many use cases are yet to come. And the like Ajay and Samir mentioned about the programmability offline, offline various kind of flavors. So it is very early to comment on the cost. But definitely, when infrastructure is going to scale, so without cost, it might not happen.
Sure. I think there are a couple of questions, but we partly answered them. Tanvi, one more question I want to ask is, considering the DPI, which is nothing but a major stakeholder is a government. Obviously, the private companies and the banks are also there doing a lot of innovation. Can you see how the private innovation and specifically the government innovation shaping up? What kind of policies are there? How do you see it on a policy front, Tanvi?
Yeah, I think that's $1 million question. It's because now I think innovation is like no longer the purview of labs and like we had earlier, the internet came out of DARPA and it came out of these military research labs and things like this. Like it's no longer happening in that way, right? So all of innovation itself has been democratized. So AI has been put into the hands of everybody with the launch of Gen AI, right? Crypto has put open access to everybody. So now things are moving at a scale that they've not before, and this is what they call the exponential age of innovation. So it's a more competitive environment. I mean, it's in terms of how much innovation can the controlled and regulated system provide, right, compared to what is happening externally. I think that will always be a little bit of a competitive dynamic. But I think I don't think necessarily that they are playing the same game, and I think the government's very clear in terms of the government's is providing safe services to its citizens. Everything is tested. Everything is uh, it is very robust, and I don't know if you can compare what has to be done in the public sector to what happens externally necessarily.
Sure. There's one more question. I don't know how exactly relatable to this is, but let me shoot it. We partly discussed privacy. Once this question is from someone called Enric D'Souza, who's asking, what about Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023 with regards to CBDC? I think people are still trying to understand if the privacy norm comes, when the data protection bill comes, whether it will have any impact on the CBDC. Anybody wants to take that? Samir, Ajay, you want to take
Or
that?
I can take a stab. See, I think there should be no. I don't think there should be any impact of DPDP on CBDC. In fact, see, one of the benefits of CBDC is that, as an example, let's say using UPI, you make a transfer. The person receiving the transfer knows something about you. As an example, they know your number. In CBDC, even that information is not passed on. So even the guy who's receiving money from you doesn't get any information about you. So your information is very kind of kept very confidential and private. And so because CBDC works on this principle of cash, it is of equivalence with cash. It is the data sharing is actually zero. I wouldn't even say minimal. Actually, it's kind of, there is no data being shared with anyone when it comes to CBDC. So I don't think there should be a major impact. What we obviously need to see is, like, right now only banks are allowed to offer CBDC. Over time, if, and by the way, the bank, it's like your bank which is offering you, so your data is with your bank. Over time, as this system becomes more democratized, which I think at some point it will be, then there'll be, multiple, like, Axis Bank can offer to Yes Bank's customer, and Yes Bank customers can use SBI's wallet to make transfers, etc. So when that happens, obviously there'll be some KYC information that you will have to do, but again, that will be under the construct of DPDP, because obviously getting data is fully allowed, right? It's kind of the sharing, etc., that becomes tougher. So yeah, long story short, I don't see any major impact.
Okay, sure. I think last 2 3 minutes, and I will go very quick and just go. Maybe you can answer in few seconds. Treat this as a rapid fire, maybe. Uh, Ajay, what is the big benefit that the bank has if after CBDC? What is the biggest benefit that you have?
See, more stickiness, right? End of the day, the more payment collections that you do for your customers, it could be a consumer, it could be a merchant, the more sticky your account becomes, right? So you're more and more operational. The customer is within your ecosystem. You tend to generate more revenue when the customer uses you more.
Samir, what is the benefit that RBI has after CBDC comes into the picture? Will the cost of printing money will go away, or will maybe the transparency come in terms of making people digital? What is the benefit that the RBI has? What do you think?
I think there are some tactical benefits, and then there are some, I would say, strategic benefits. Tactical benefits are the ones you mentioned, which is, hopefully less currency gets printed. And by the way, the currency operations is very intense for RBI and also for the banks. So hopefully less currency gets printed. Then less currency gets printed, there is less fraudulent activity around currency as well. So there is that benefit. But I think I think the RBI is doing this obviously for this reason, but also for the more strategic reason, which is, see, new technology, kind of, you don't know what can happen. Like, you can't, you see, all of us only know what we can see right now and what we can envisage right now, but we don't really know what it can do 5 years, 10 years from now, right? So if you go back to UPI days, right, like when UPI was launched, most people would say that IMPS already exists. What is the need for UPI? And today you can see what UPI has done. So CBDC potentially can lead to a very different set of use cases, a different set of products, which today we are not able to envisage, and that could then bring further innovation in financial services. That, I think, is the bigger benefit for RBI.
Sushant, will
नहीं आपका
CBDC?
see RBI के point of view से boss मतलब when you bring in offline or when you bring in programmability, the transparency is a huge strategic value. The conversion of cash to digital, cost translation, less counterfeit, all of that is a huge strategic value. When you do cross-border transactions, in future, the government has a stated objective of making rupee more international and making rupee the predominant mode of settlement, right? CBDC, given that India has been a leader on CBDC, India is one of the biggest beneficiaries of remittances in the world. We have almost $140 billion of remittances coming in the country. All of the rupee CBDC settlement will actually make rupee more prominent. So various strategic use cases, will be there with the government and with the RBI in the near to medium term, which can be fructified using CBDC.
Absolutely. Again, one common question to both of you, Sushant and Radmi. Sushant, you go first, as quick as possible. Will CBDC lead the payment space going ahead?
I do agree with that. So because we are not talking about only the retail one, so we have also CBDC, which is also account based, and it is going to be tokenized also. So in everywhere you are going to have CBDC, but it will take some time, around a couple of years or so.
Yeah, Tanvi, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I agree with Sushanta, so that I think it will go in that direction. It could also happen very quickly if you have a UPI and CBDC integration. that could happen almost very fast.
Sure. I think I will stop here. The time is really up. I think I didn't realize we have been talking since last almost 1 hour. Thank you so much, friends, for joining us and watching this session live. And thank you so much, Ajay, Sameer, Sushant, and Tanvi, for sharing your perspective specifically on the CBDC. Thank you so much for being part of Fintech Diary on etbfsi.com.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank you,
all. Thank you.
everyone. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.